Hey, it's Jess, back with another Misfit Makers Besties tutorial, and this week we are doing the Northern Lights. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We upload every Wednesday and Friday, and that's the way to get notified. Also, check out our free Facebook group, Misfit Makers, and if you want to take your business to the next level, check out our mentorship group. Alright guys, so today I'm starting out with a true 32 ounce from the Tipsy Magnolia. You can find some discount codes down below. I started out by spray painting my tumbler black. I used flat black from Rustoleum and I let it gas off and dry for about 2 hours. You want to make sure that your spray paint is completely dry since we will be handling our cup a lot. Next step is you want to find the skyline of your choice. So you can do like a tree skyline or a city skyline. I made my bestie Jerry a really pretty Northern Lights tumbler last year, and I did the skyline of Mexico City, and I thought that was just really neat, something different. So if you don't like the way the trees look, pick your favorite city or where you're from and do that. Next, I'm going to start by applying my skyline all the way around my tumbler. I'm just using 651 vinyl and a color that I don't use a lot. If you have removable vinyl, I would do that instead of 651 just because it's going to make it a little easier when we go to remove our vinyl from our tumbler. You can also add this vinyl towards the bottom of your cup if you wanted more of the Micas to show, more of the Northern Lights to be visible, but I kind of really liked the way it looked right in the middle of my tumbler, having the bottom half of my tumbler just black. So after we get our wrap all the way around, and my transfer tape is also from Vinyl Fun for Everyone as well, then we are ready for our next step. So we are going to go in with our Micas. Now, all of my Micas are from Inspired Angels, but honestly, any Micas that you have will work just fine. I'm also going to be using CCDIY Epoxy, and I'll be using their Fast Set. Keep in mind, Fast Set, you only have about 5 minutes of work time. So if you just are not that fast, or you are afraid that your epoxy is going to get too hot on you, then just use a regular epoxy, and that way you're not rushed. We're going to go by applying a thin coat all the way at the top of our tumbler. Now, at first I was, of course, trying to be a little careful, not getting too much on my vinyl, but honestly, don't worry about that because it's just going to happen. You're going to get epoxy. As long as you don't get epoxy on the bottom half below our vinyl piece, then you'll be okay. So now I'm going to go in with my color choices, and you can use any color choices of your desire. And I'm going to use the end of my popsicle stick and just slowly sprinkle my mica powder all over the top. I first went in with my purple, and now I'm going in with my teal. I ended up using about 5 different mica choices, but again, you can choose however many different colors that you'd like. After you are happy with the way it looks, then we are ready to spread it out. I ended up going back after I got all of my colors on there that I liked. I ended up adding a little bit of white mica powder just because I didn't want my Northern Lights to be too dark, and I ended up putting a little bit more of my purple mica powder on top since that was our very first color. I knew my other colors were going to like hide that purple, and I did want some of that purple to show through. So as you see, I have purple, teal, pink, yellow, and white. Five colors. Look how pretty. I love the way it looks like just like this. I was like getting inspired, but when I was sprinkling it on the tumbler like this, I'm like, this reminds me of like 80s pants. Do you guys remember like those splattered 80s pants? That's what it reminded me of. Okay, so after you are happy, then you are going to take your gloved finger, and I'm going to start at the base where our vinyl is, and we are just going to, you're going to spread your finger up at using like a diagonal motion. You can even kind of put a little swirl motion to it if that's the look that you want to go. I mostly just stuck to like a straight line going from bottom to top, always starting back at the bottom. So you don't want to go bottom, top, top, bottom, bottom, top. You want to go in one direction the entire time. Just make sure, a little tip, make sure you get all the way down into your tree line. You see where my tree line is still kind of black down there? If we were to pull our vinyl right now, those trees would not look like trees because there is not color around the tree line. So they're just going to look like blobs. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So make sure you get those colors all the way down there into that tree line. And then this only took a couple minutes. I probably went over it once or twice, blending those colors. And then I'm going to let my tumbler sit for about 10 to 15 minutes so that epoxy can get a little hard before trying to remove your vinyl. You do not want your cup to fully cure because it will be impossible to get your vinyl pieces up, and you do not want to remove your vinyl pieces right away because that epoxy will just run into that tree line and you won't have those silhouettes that you want. So if you're using a fast set, I would say about 10 to 15 minutes. If you're using a regular epoxy, I would wait maybe an hour or so. You can always test a little piece, and if your epoxy is still just too runny, then I would chuck it in another hour. Maybe 2 hours with regular epoxy. Once you remove all of your vinyl pieces, I found it easiest to use like tweezers and then my like little weeding tool, but honestly, whatever tool that helps you the most, use that. Just be careful that you don't chip that paint because we don't have any epoxy at the bottom and it's just a coat of spray paint. So if you dig your tool into it too deep, you can leave scratch marks. Now, I know this tumbler it's going to look a little crazy. I know it's not going to look like tree lines right now, but I promise once you get that coat of epoxy over the entire thing, it really brightens everything up and looks so good. So my next step after we removed all of our vinyl pieces, of course, I used my dry brush to brush off our tumbler, getting any loose debris or mica powders that we may have sprinkled on the bottom on accident. I then went into my silhouette to create my little stencil piece for my moon. Now, this is really easy to do. I have a silhouette, but I'm sure it is just as easy on your Cricut. I created a rectangle and then I created a circle. I put my circle shape on top of my rectangle and then subtracted the two. So that's going to subtract the circle from your rectangle or your square, and this is what you're left with. You now created your own little stencil. Of course, if you have a circle stencil already, you can use that, but I like doing it this way because then you can make your moon however small or big that you want. I made my moon a little big, but that's okay. I really like the way that this looked. After you apply your stencil on your tumbler, I just sanded that little section, brushed off any debris, and now we are going in with our pop of color. I'm using white pop of color, and I'm also using a gray. I wanted to layer my paint so it gave like the moon like some dimension, because we all know the moon has craters, and I didn't want just like a smooth white circle on my cup. I really wanted to add like layers and dimension to make it look more realistic. So after you are completely happy with it, just make sure you're drying in between those layer sections. Like let it dry for a few minutes, then add another layer, let it dry. That way you're not adding just a super thick coat. My very last touch is I went in with a little sponge and I just kind of sponged some more white paint on top, again to kind of create and give it a little bit of dimension. I'm going to let that dry for about 20 minutes, and then while that was drying, I went in and added a little bit of white paint to my mountaintops so it looked like little snow caps. This tree line that I used came with some mountains, and it actually came with a house. I ended up not using the house because I just thought removing those pieces or adding those pieces in with mica powder, it wouldn't turn out the way I had envisioned. So I just didn't do anything with those pieces, and at the end I removed all of the vinyl together. But I wanted to add a little bit of snow cap to our mountains so they really looked like mountains and not just anthills. So I'm just using my little brush. We're going in very carefully Again, building up. I ended up doing 2 coats because after the first coat, you could still see that black spray paint show through my white paint, or yes, show through my white paint. So just dry it in between, do 2 coats, and then you're good to go. But I love the way, just that little special touch, I love the way that turned out. Now we are ready to remove any extra vinyl pieces, and we are ready to remove our stencil for our moon. So satisfying. Now, if you ended up getting any paint on the outside of your moon, like around your stencil, there was a couple little sections that I got too carried away. Just a little bit of water, like a baby wipe, a little bit of water will clean that right up. Just inspect your cup before putting on your final coat of epoxy, because then there's no going back. Ah, so satisfying, that last little tear. Love the way that looks so much. So you see I have all that scatter of like white paint. I'm just going to take my dry brush and brush it all off and make sure it is good to go. So for my final coat of epoxy over this entire thing, I used medium viscosity and I mixed up about 40 mLs. I had a little bit of left over, but I wanted to do a nice thick coat because I wanted it to be my final coat. Now you could see what I'm talking about, how this entire thing like shines back up. So gorgeous. Now you can also add a little bit of glitter into your mica powder for the top, or you could create like little star elements. I left it the way it was because I thought it was gorgeous just like this, and I didn't want to add too many elements. Voila! What do you guys think? I'm obsessed with the way this turned out, and I hope it inspired you. I cannot wait to see everybody's, and make sure you leave your comments down below. We read everybody's comments. Bye, guys.